question we'll take to Chris Carlson.
Dino, I was curious, when you have a team that's kind of as young and beat up as yours is, what would you look like aside from wins and losses to try to judge whether that program is headed the right direction?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to make sure they're still improving. Okay, we want to make sure that some of these young people that they don't look the same as they did the first week or the second week. There's got to be signs of improvement, and that's what we're looking for in the football staff, and that's what we're looking for in the family.
Thanks, Chris. Next, we'll go to Dan Tortora.
Hey, Coach, just what you could say about, moving forward here with the team, just what you've been able to maybe assess leadership-wise to go into that, just yourself as a leader, what you've tried to do moving forward, and maybe some of the leaders you've looked to on the team to have a central message.
Well, I think we just need to make sure that the leaders are leading and the other people need to be following, myself included. There's certain things that need to be happening. There's a certain level of standard that needs to be, everybody needs to meet up to. And we need to make sure that we're not lowering our standards to satisfy people. Our standard is our standard, and everybody needs to reach it.
Do you have, just a quick to that, who some of those leaders are?
I don't want to signal guys out, but I had a big meeting with the senior class the other day.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Coach.
Next, we'll go to Anthony DeBundo from the Daily Orange.
Hey, Dino, I hope you're doing well. I want to ask about recruiting. How much of the lack of depth do you think comes down to the recruiting rankings, and Syracuse has been kind of lower in the ACC in recent years? How much of that do you assess to the lack of depth this year?
No, I don't really get into the rankings. I mean, I saw Jimmy Garoppolo tearing them up the other day on TV, and his star rating was 0. So I really don't get into the rankings part of it. I know it's a really good thing for the offseason, and it's good for fans. We make evaluations, and hopefully we're evaluating correctly. And based off of those evaluations, there's personal player development that needs to go on. Some of our players are not as ranked as high as some of the other teams we play. I know that Clemson is starting 2 or 3 freshmen that started their first snap, their first snap of college football. They played at Clemson as a freshman. I mean, for that player to be able to play at that level is unbelievable. And some of their recruits are exactly like that. Trevor Lawrence, ETN, along with the defensive personnel that they have. Now we're not in the same situation they are as far as getting those type of players in early, but through development and evaluation, we are allowed to develop our players where we have an opportunity to compete with those guys on the football field. And when you're playing as many young people as we are, the physical development and the mental part of the development is lacking a little bit because they're getting in the game a little bit earlier than they should because of the amount of injuries that we've suffered at certain positions.
Thanks, Tino.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Anthony. Next, we'll go to Nico Tamarian.
There we go. Sorry, I had a problem with the mute button there. Coach, I'm going to start my question, if you don't mind, with a little bit of a history. The last time Syracuse was this much of an underdog, they actually won the game, and my research was right, on the road at Louisville in 2007. I'm not trying to make, obviously.
Yeah, you are, Nico. Don't put the house on it. Here we go. No, I'm just kidding.
Maybe I will. But, is there something to be said for the miracle, the Herb Brooks line? Great moments are born from great opportunity, obviously. As tough as it may be Saturday.
You know what? You get an opportunity to play the number 1 ranked team in the country. Whether you're injured free or not, whether you're playing with all seniors or all freshmen, you get an opportunity to compete. No one expects you to win, okay, outside the family. And to be able to compete in a situation like that, to measure up to see where you're at, we'll see. I mean, we saw what the team did last week, and we saw what the final score was last week, and that was a team that, that was fortunately we beat, but it was a close game, and it wasn't a close game with those guys. So we understand how tall the task is, but, we'll be there.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nico. Next, we'll go to Darius Joshua.
How you doing, Coach? Kind of wanted to take a slight broad step a little bit here. Kind of what did you see from the young QBs last week, and through 1 week, can you tell already if any of them will be able to help you at any point throughout the season? Again,
we're trying to get Rex ready. We're trying to get Rex caught up. And, the thing I saw last week in the young QBs is that deer in the head look like, oh my God, I'm over here with the varsity and I'm getting yelled at by the offensive coordinator and the head coach. Okay, so they're going through some new things that they've never gone through before, but they're making strides, and if it gets to an opportunity where they can play, hopefully not because we need to play them, that'll be great. And if not, then they're going to have to go in there and we're going to have to see what they're going to do. But I'm not in a hurry to throw my little brother out there yet. You know what I mean? I would like to see him grow up and do some other things before I throw him out there with the big boys.
Thank you, Coach.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Darius. Next, we go to Mark Larson.
Hey, Coach. After the first couple of weeks of the season, I think the theme coming from the locker room was we're really close. Just little adjustments. We're this close. After the last 2 weeks, I don't think the same theme is coming. So what is happening now that how close are we now?
I don't want to go back to the close part. There's a certain type of fight that you want to see in your team. Regardless of who you're playing, you want to see a fight. And we need to make sure that we're fighting. There was a big fight Saturday night after our game, 2 guys going at it. I couldn't afford to see it, but I heard great reviews about those boxers. And we need to make sure that we're fighting the right way and we're fighting the good fight.
So you're not seeing fight out of your team?
I'm saying that we need to see the fight. We need to see it out there.
Thanks, Dino.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Mark. Next, we go to Nate Mink.
It was all the way back last season. You addressed there was a certain position group on your team that you wanted to do some different things this offseason for so that they could be a little bit more healthier in the preseason at the beginning of the year. Obviously, so much of this year's got shaken up, but with respect to the amount of injuries and sort of the pattern that has hit you with year after year, can you put a light on that and change anything with regards to how to prevent injuries, and how would you do so?
I don't know. I think some of that is supreme being stuff. The original injuries I thought were a lot more concussional and things like that when I first got here. That has not been the case. We really haven't. We've had some guys DQ'd because of stuff like that. But this recent batch of injuries are just random phenomena. I mean, they're just, some of them are almost comical if you weren't involved in it and you weren't having to, understand that you have to play games because these guys are out based off of what happened. Thing happened to Cisco. I've been in football my entire life. I've never heard of that happening at that moment, at that time, ever. I haven't even been able to talk to anybody about it. I've never heard of that happening. And a bunch of those injuries are like that. So there's no sense in speculating. I mean, that's God's will. Those are definitely happenings, and we need to adjust and improvise and move on. I don't know if we can prevent some of the things that have happened.
Thanks, Nate. Next, we'll go to Stephen Bailey.
Hey, Dino, it's funny you mentioned, not funny, but you had a meeting with your seniors, because I wanted to ask you kind of about that group and the importance they kind of play now with their decision to potentially come back next year. I know you got a team now and a lot to deal with, but how much of that is on your mind? And, what has your messaging been to them about what it could mean for them to come back next year?
I really didn't talk to him about that, Stephen. What I talked to him about was this year and making sure that they treat this year like it's the last one. The next one is a bonus, but you got to treat everything, you need to treat this year like it is your last year, because it might be. And make sure that you're getting everything out of not only yourself, but your teammates that you need to get out of them, because we play this. The 2020 season is played for the seniors because they may not get another one. And you really need to appreciate when a football player is in his senior year, because there is no rec league or anything like that for football players. You don't get to show your jump shot and go from baseball to softball and hit the balls over the fence and drink Las Cervezas and stuff, talking about how good of a baseball player you were. And when you're done with football, there's no flag leagues where your kids and your wives are going to watch you play on Sundays when there's real football going on. So this is it. So make sure you appreciate this year, and make sure the underclassmen appreciate that this could be your last opportunity, and they're doing everything they can to make sure you go out the right way.
this is the one year where that's not necessarily the case, right? The NCAA has given all these guys the opportunity to come back after the Liberty game. Someone asked you about Kingsley Jonathan, and you said that's a guy who we want back. Have you thought about when you're trying to extend that messaging to those players? And I mean, looking at your team for next year, how helpful would it be to have Aaron Service and your starting defensive line and Nykeem and those guys back next year, knowing the depth issues that you've had?
Those will all be things that we address at the end. I think it's also a lot of that stuff is unspoken. I think you're right in all the stuff that you're saying, but I really want to keep a smaller lens, and I want to stay focused on what's going on in this season right now to make sure we don't let our opportunities go by this year, hoping on something that's going to happen down the road.
Thanks, Dino.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we'll go to Adam Hillman from the Daily Orange.
So, Dino, I know you talked about the randomness of the injuries. You talked about Andre's injury. Kind of at the NFL level, we've seen a lot of injuries due to the lack of practice time, the weirdness of training camp in 2020. How much of the injuries can you attribute to 2020 being so weird with the, maybe not little practice time, but the difference in practices and the issues not being able to hit as much in practice? So how much of that can you attribute to 2020?
I think you can attribute a lot of things that's happened in 2020 to 2020. It's just been totally different. Even the interaction with guys has been different than it's ever been since I've been a coach. So it's one of those years where you sit back and you really got to listen to what's going on. You got to be sensitive to a lot of things. And then you get back to the topic at hand, which is, hitting, tackling, breaking tackles, getting better at football and getting game plans together and trying to execute those game plans at the highest level so you can have an opportunity to win. But there's no doubt that 2020 has been a different year. I totally agree with you.
Next, we'll go to Brent Axe.
Good morning, Coach. Facing Clemson in an individual game is a big enough challenge, but this is also the team you're chasing overall in the ACC. Everybody is, really. I wonder where you feel the program stands in chasing Clemson at this point, given recent events.
Based off of what those guys winning the national championship 2 out of the last 4 years and the facilities that they have compared to everybody else in the conference, I think the entire country is chasing Clemson. Alabama is chasing Clemson. Everybody's chasing Clemson. And I think it's fortunate for us that every year we get an opportunity to play them. I don't look at that as something that's bad. I look at that as something that's good. And unfortunately this year, we're really banged up and we got a bunch of young guys going against some really good first-round draft picks. They're going to be playing in the National Football League, but that's all part of it. We enjoy challenges like that, even though, things may not work out the way people see them. That's what we get in it for. So what other people look like, I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to be that guy. That's the reason why you're not us, because we do enjoy those challenges.
And my follow-up, Coach, is have you addressed the situation with Taj Harris, and will that result in him missing any playing time this Saturday at this point?
We have. Taj stood up on Sunday. He's apologized to the team. We have addressed that. It's internal discipline, and we will handle that with inside the family, but he has issued apologies. Yes, he has. Young man making a mistake, we all understand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to John Kikis from the Associated Press.
Thank you. How would you assess, the mood? Is there still fight left in them?
I could not hear the question, Tyler.
How would you assess the mood of your team?
I would say the mood of my team is they're getting ready to play probably the best football team in the U.S. right now, and they're excited about their opportunity.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, John. Next, we'll go to Ben Schulman from the WAER.
Hey, Coach. There were a few times in the last game that Sean Tucker appeared to be grabbing at his leg. Notably, someone hopped off the field right before Rex threw the first touchdown. Is there any concern about overusing the freshman so far?
Overusing the freshman. I think Sean would be mad if I took him out of the game. He doesn't. Sean is a GoDaddy. He wants to go all the time. If you watch that game, he actually got rotated in and rotated out. We didn't use him every single snap. But he doesn't think that way. I think Sean wants to be in there as much as he can. But the one thing that we will not do is we will not put anybody in a dangerous situation. I personally take guys out of the game. I personally see somebody make a tackle, and I'm like, he's not looking right, get him out. And I've had coaches, he's okay, coach, and I'll say, get him out. And they'll send him in and send the other guy out, bring him to the sideline. Are you okay? Yes, coach, I'm okay, and I'll put him back in. So I watch the game for a reason. I've been around the game a long time, and I know if a guy is just a little owie or a guy is trying to be a soldier, a warrior, I shouldn't have said the word soldier, but trying to be a tough guy when really he needs to come out, clear his head, and get back in there. I will take care of these guys.
And just a quick follow-up, how do you rate the performance of Cooper Lutz in the game?
I thought Cooper did a nice job. I really did. I thought he went in and he did some things. He made some blocks. But the really cool thing about Cooper is Cooper's been doing that like the last 3 weeks in practice. He's really been coming on, and I was telling him, like, Cooper, you're going to get a chance. You're doing a good job. Keep it up. And he kind of looks at me and he goes, Coach, you won't say that. I said, you know I won't say it unless I mean it. He has been doing a good job, and that's why you got an opportunity. I was really excited. I think he did some good things out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got time for 2 more. We'll start with Matt Hausworth.
Hey, Dino, I know a lot of these questions have been based around your team and what it's looked like out there on the field so far, but I'd like to ask, how are you doing during all this? And I guess, I know you're a man of faith, and, how are you holding up through these first 5 or 6 games?
I'm excited that you asked me that. I was reading this morning, and one of the things I was reading is that you're not judged on your past victories. You're only judged on the victories to come, or something to that effect. It's not going to be straight biblical if somebody says, I can't find it in the Bible. Basically, that's what it meant. And it means that everything you did in the past is really good, but that's in history. And what are you doing today in the present? What are you doing tomorrow? And I am really trying to stay mentally, physically, and spiritually sharp, because I think that there's nothing but good that's going to come out of this. In every decision that I make, I'm trying to make it clear. Emotions always involved, but I'm really trying to go deeper than that and push by that and see the greater good in things. And we've got a lot of guys that are playing, which is usually not very good, but down the road, those guys are going to all get better. And hopefully I get an opportunity to see all that and go neener, remember that year, and now look at them now, where they're all grown up and they've got muscles from Walmart, buys and tries, and they can walk around and people don't kick sand in their face when they're on the football field, even though there's no sand on the gridiron. So I know there's better days to come, and hopefully I'm here to get to see all of them.
Thanks, Matt. And for our last question, we'll go to Jacob Payne.
Hi, Coach. You talked about it earlier. I was just wondering if you could clarify and provide more context when you mentioned players fighting following the Liberty game.
When you say fighting, my thing is there's a certain look to a good – watch this. This is the best thing I can tell you. I wish you could do this. I really wish you could do this. People say, hey, I know a good football team when I see it. That statement might be true, but to me, I've got a better statement for you. If you go to a good football team, you go to a good football team practice or a good football team game, you can stand on the sidelines and close your eyes. Stand on the sideline, close your eyes, and you can hear a good football team. What you hear tells you whether that football team is good or not. Is there massive communication before the snap of the ball that you can't see with your eyes closed? And do you hear people trying to make sure other people are right before the snap? You don't get to see the snap, and then all of a sudden you start hearing sounds and banging and crushing and ouches, and you can hear the struggle of people fighting to get somewhere, even though your eyes are closed. And then whether it was a run or whether it was a pass, you hear the ball, you hear something cutting the wind, and then all of a sudden you hear a boom, and all the noise stopped because that play is over, whether it was a pass or a run, because some people got there with a bad attitude. And now that play's over, and there's quiet, and there's calmness, and then there's a celebration, either for them or the other team, and then it all starts over again. So my thing is I want to make sure that even though we're at the game and our eyes are open, that we could close our eyes and make sure that we're at a football game. That's what I mean by fight.
Thanks, Coach. Media, that concludes today's